I used to be the wife of a millionaire. I lived in a lakefront mansion, drove a luxury car, wore a diamond wedding ring, and thought I had it all. Until one cold, rainy morning in Seattle, I was thrown out of my own home with a slap, a divorce paper, and a pregnant belly carrying twins I didn't even know existed. I'm Ariel Monroe, and this isn't a love story. It's a journey of rising from ruin, of betrayal turned into rebirth, of forging my own crown from the ashes. Before I share my story, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever fought through hardship for your family. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. The slap came without warning. One moment, I was standing in our marble kitchen, clutching adoption brochures like they were lifelines. The next, my cheek burned with the force of Preston's palm, and the papers scattered across the Italian tile like broken promises. You just don't get it, do you? His voice, once the sweetest sound in my mornings, now cut through me like Seattle's winter wind. My mother's right. You're broken, Ariel, a barren tree pretending to bloom. I touched my face, feeling the heat spread beneath my fingertips. 4 years. 4 years of marriage, of trying, of monthly disappointments marked by single lines on pregnancy tests. 4 years of watching his love curdle into resentment, drop by drop, until this moment when it finally soured completely. Preston, please. The papers are on the counter. He couldn't even look at me anymore. His eyes, those green eyes that once promised forever, fixed on the sub-zero refrigerator behind me. Sign them. I'll have someone collect your things. The adoption brochures lay at my feet. Smiling children, happy families, possibilities I'd collected like hope. I bent to gather them, my hands shaking, when I heard her voice. Leave them. Elaine Langston stood in the doorway, her Chanel suit impeccable as always, her smile sharp as broken glass. We won't be needing fairy tales in this house anymore. She'd been waiting for this moment. I could see it in the satisfaction that played at the corners of her mouth. The woman who'd called me that girl for the first 2 years, who'd placed her hand on my flat stomach at every family gathering with mock concern, asking, "Any news yet, dear?" My legs felt like water as I straightened. The diagnosis from 3 months ago echoed in my head. Severe uterine scarring from that stupid teenage car accident. The one where I'd saved my little sister but lost my chance at motherhood. Preston had held me when we got the news. He'd whispered that it didn't matter, that we were enough. Lies, all lies. You have 1 hour, Elaine said, checking her Cartier watch. The locks will be changed after that. I looked between them, mother and son, united in their disgust. My throat burned with unshed tears, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Not here, not now. The December rain was just starting when I walked out of the Langston mansion in Madison Park. I had 2 suitcases, my laptop bag, and a cardboard box of personal items that Maria, the housekeeper, had helped me pack while whispering apologies in Spanish. Everything else, the life I'd built, the home I'd designed with my own hands, the nursery I'd secretly sketched, stayed behind. My Honda Civic looked pathetic, parked between Preston's Porsche and Elaine's Mercedes. I threw my things in the trunk, my hands numb from cold and shock. As I drove away, I caught a glimpse of them in the rearview mirror, standing in the doorway of their perfect house, watching to make sure I really left. The space where my wedding ring had been felt naked against the steering wheel. I'd left it on the kitchen counter, right next to the divorce papers I'd signed with shaking hands. Preston Langston wanted his freedom? He could have it. But as I merged onto I-5, heading south with no destination in mind, one thought burned through the shock. I'd survived that accident at 16. I'd survived 4 years of Elaine's poison. I'd survive this too, even if I didn't know how yet. The studio apartment in Tacoma smelled like mold and broken dreams. At 400 square feet, it was smaller than the walk-in closet I'd had at Preston's. The walls were water-stained, the carpet was older than I was, and the radiator clanged like a ghost trying to escape. But it was mine. Or at least, it would be after I somehow made next month's rent. I'd been living on savings for 3 weeks, sending out resumes to every architecture firm in the South Sound. My Princeton degree and 4 years at Langston Construction should have opened doors. Instead, I got polite rejections, or worse, silence. Elaine's reach was longer than I'd imagined. The morning of my interview at Rainier Design, a small firm desperate enough to overlook my connection to the Langstons, I woke up dizzy. The room spun as I tried to stand, and my stomach churned with more than just nerves. Stress, I muttered, gripping the bathroom sink. Just stress. But halfway through explaining my portfolio to Jim and Gwen, the firm's owner, the spinning returned with vengeance. The last thing I remembered was his concerned face before the world went black. I woke up to the antiseptic smell of hospital and the steady beep of monitors. A nurse with kind eyes and graying hair was adjusting my IV. "There you are," she said gently. "You gave everyone quite a scare." "What happened?" "You fainted. Mr. Nguyen called 911. She checked her chart. "When was your last period, honey?" The question hit me like cold water. I tried to count back, but the days since Preston had blurred together. I'm not sure. Maybe 2 months? I can't get pregnant anyway. I have uterine scarring. She gave me a look I had seen before. Part sympathy, part professional skepticism. "We'll run some tests." An hour later, Dr. Patel walked in with an expression I couldn't read. She was young, maybe early 30s, with warm brown eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Langston..." "Monroe?" I corrected quickly. "Ariel Monroe." "Miss Monroe." She sat on the edge of my bed, ultrasound images in her hand. "Your scarring is significant, yes. But sometimes nature finds a way. You're approximately 8 weeks pregnant." The words didn't compute. "That's impossible." "With twins?" The room tilted again, but this time I was already lying down. "Twins?" 2 heartbeats on the ultrasound she showed me, 2 tiny blurs that shouldn't exist. "I don't understand." My voice sounded far away. "The specialist said, medicine isn't always absolute." Dr. Patel squeezed my hand. "This is high risk. The scarring means we'll need to monitor you closely. Do you have support? The father?" "The father. Preston. Who'd slapped me for suggesting adoption. Who'd signed divorce papers rather than raise another woman's child. Who'd chosen his mother's approval over our vows." "No," I whispered. "There's no one." But I had to try. For these 2 impossible heartbeats, I had to try. The next morning, I stood outside the gleaming towers of Langston Construction, my stomach still rolling with morning sickness. The security guard I'd shared coffee with for 4 years looked right through me. "I need to see Preston Langston." "Name?" "Ariel, I'm his ex-wife." The word tasted like ash. The guard made a call, nodding several times before hanging up. "Mr. Langston's assistant says he's in meetings all day. You can leave a message with reception." I knew Jennifer, Preston's new assistant. We'd hired her together 6 months ago. Now she stood behind the glass doors, arms crossed, shaking her head. "Please," I said, hating how desperate I sounded. "It's important." Another call. This time the guard's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. If you don't, I'll need to call the police." The words I needed to say, "I'm carrying his children," died in my throat. Through the glass, I could see the lobby I'd helped design, the brass letters spelling out the Langston legacy. None of it mine anymore. The contractions started at 28 weeks. I was mopping floors at the Tacoma Public Library, the only job that would hire a visibly pregnant woman with a mysterious employment gap. The pain dropped me to my knees between contemporary fiction and self-help, my mop clattering against Joyce Meyer's latest book on overcoming adversity. "No, no, no," I whispered, hands cradling my swollen belly. "Not yet, please, not yet." The ambulance ride blurred into emergency rooms and urgent voices. Dr. Patel appeared like an angel in scrubs, her face tight with concern. "We need to stop these contractions," she said, already directing nurses. "Get her on magnesium sulfate. Call the NICU." 20 hours later, my sons arrived screaming into the world. 3 pounds each of fierce determination. The nurses whisked them away before I could touch them, their cries thin as bird songs. "They're fighters," Dr. Patel assured me, exhausted but smiling. "Just like their mother." I named them alone in that recovery room. Ethan James and Lucas Alexander. Strong names for tiny warriors who'd inherited my stubbornness, if nothing else. The NICU became my world. 63 days of watching machines breathe for them. of singing lullabies through incubator walls, of pumping breast milk every 3 hours because it was the only thing I could give them. My supervisor at the library had filled my position the day I went into labor. No job meant no insurance. The bills piled up like snow, $3,000 a day, multiplied by 2 babies, multiplied by 2 months. Numbers that stopped meaning anything. There are programs, the hospital social worker said gently, sliding pamphlets across the table. UAC for formula, Medicaid for their ongoing care, food banks for you. I'd designed million-dollar homes. Now I was learning the bus routes to social services offices, filling out forms that asked for my income, none, and assets, gone. The day I brought them home to that moldy studio, I found a box waiting outside my door. Inside were baby clothes, diapers, and an envelope with $500 cash. No note, but I recognized Maria's handwriting on the address label. I sobbed over that box until the boys woke up hungry, which they did every 2 hours like clockwork. No time for tears when you are measuring formula and changing diapers for 2. That's when I met Luis. He lived in the apartment below mine, and I'd seen him shuffling to the mailbox with his walker. The night the boys wouldn't stop crying, both colicky, both exhausted, both picking up on my desperation, he knocked on my door. "Forgive an old man's intrusion," he said in accented English. "But I remember this sound. My Elena had twins too, many years ago." He held up a steaming pot. "Chamomile tea, for you, not them. You need strength." Luis Gonzalez became my unlikely savior. Retired lawyer, widower, keeper of stories and wisdom. He'd held my boys while I showered, taught me lullabies in Spanish, and shared his groceries when he noticed I was living on peanut butter sandwiches. "Why are you helping me?" I asked one evening, both boys finally asleep in the second-hand crib we'd squeezed into the corner. "Because 40 years ago, when I came to this country with nothing, someone helped me." He sipped his tea thoughtfully. "And because I see something in you, mija. You're at the bottom of the canyon now, yes? But you have wings. You just forgot how to use them." "I'm not sure I ever had them." "You're here, aren't you? Your boys are alive, fed, loved." He leaned forward, his dark eyes intense. "Those who pushed you down, they think you're finished. Prove them wrong." "How?" "Learn the law," he said simply. "Not to get revenge, that's poison, but to protect yourself and others. The law is a shield when used right." I laughed bitterly. I can barely afford diapers. Law school? University of Washington has a part-time program. Financial aid for single mothers. I still have connections. He pulled out a worn business card. "Professor Patricia Williams. Tell her Luis sent you. She'll listen." That night, after Luis left, I stood over my son's crib, watching them breathe. Ethan had Preston's nose. Lucas had his long fingers. Neither would ever know their father if I could help it, but maybe that was a blessing. They'd never know rejection, never feel unwanted. "We're going to make it," I whispered. "Somehow." Law school at night felt like climbing Everest in heels while juggling flaming torches. My days started at 4 a.m. with the twins' first feeding. Drop them at the subsidized daycare by 6:30. Bus to my paralegal job at Northwest Women's Justice Project by 7:30. Work until 4 o'clock, race back to get the boys before the daycare's 5:30 just closing time. Late fees were $1 per minute per child. I learned that the hard way. Home for dinner, baths, bedtime stories. Then catch the 7:45 bus to UW for classes until 10:30. Sleep was a memory. Coffee was lifeblood. My textbooks had spit-up stains and teething marks. "Monroe, your brief was exceptional," Professor Williams said after criminal law, holding up my paper. "Especially your analysis on domestic violence as a mitigating factor." I thought of Preston's slap, of how it had shattered more than just my marriage. Personal interest in the topic. She studied me over her glasses. "Luis was right about you. You have the instinct. Now you need the tools." Those tools came slowly, painfully. Contracts and torts while the boys had stomach flu. Constitutional law during their terrible twos. Evidence while potty training. Every semester, I thought about quitting. Every semester, I looked at their faces and kept going. The Northwest Women's Justice Project became more than just a job. As a paralegal, I helped women fill out restraining orders, navigate custody battles, escape marriages that had become prisons. I saw myself in every bruised face, every woman who apologized for taking up our time. "You're good at this," said Diane Chen, the managing attorney, after I'd talked a client through a panic attack. "You don't just know the law, you know the fear." By day, I was learning to be a shield. By night, I was forging myself into a sword. The boys grew like weeds. Ethan, bold and fearless, always climbing something he shouldn't. Lucas, thoughtful and gentle, drawing pictures of our little family of 3. They never asked about their father, and I never offered. But sometimes I'd catch a gesture, an expression, and Preston would ghost through my living room. The day I passed the bar exam, Luis was waiting outside with sparkling cider, and the boys, who'd made a banner in daycare, "Mommy is a lawyer," in crooked crayon letters. "Lawyer has a Y," I laughed, hugging them tight. "Give them time," Luis winked. "They're only 5. 5 years." It had been 5 years since Preston's slap. 5 years of food stamps and sleepless nights and small victories measured in bedtime stories finished without falling asleep. 5 years of becoming someone I didn't recognize in the mirror. Harder, stronger, carrying herself like she had nothing left to prove. My first case as a real attorney was a custody dispute. The mother, Sarah, had been my client as a paralegal. Her ex-husband was a contractor, wealthy and connected, trying to take their daughter because Sarah worked 2 minimum-wage jobs. "He says I can't provide properly," Sarah whispered, tears streaming. Maybe he's right. "No." The word came out harder than I intended. "Love provides. Sacrifice provides. Money just makes it easier. We're going to fight this." We won. Sarah kept her daughter and got child support that actually reflected his income. Watching them walk out together, I felt something I hadn't in years. Whole. Within 6 months, word spread. The single mom lawyer who understood, who fought like hell because she'd been in those trenches, who never judged when clients cried or couldn't pay the full retainer up front. "You're building something," Diane said when I finally left to start my own practice. "Something the city needs." Monroe Legal Alliance opened in a small office in Pioneer Square. Nothing fancy. Secondhand furniture, law books from estate sales, a coffee maker that only worked if you hit it twice. But it was mine. The twins did homework at the conference table while I met with clients. They learned to answer phones professionally by age 7, to file alphabetically by 8. Our little law firm family. "Mom," Lucas asked one evening, organizing case files with the seriousness of a tiny paralegal, "why do all these moms cry in your office?" I thought about how to explain systemic inequality to an 8-year-old. Sometimes the world isn't fair to mommies. My job is to make it a little more fair. Like when Jimmy's dad took his Xbox because his mom bought it? Exactly like that. Ethan looked up from his math homework. "Is that why we don't have a dad? Was he not fair?" The question I'd dreaded for 8 years. I set down my pen, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes people aren't ready to be parents. That doesn't mean anything about you two. You're perfect exactly as you are. They seemed satisfied, returning to their tasks. But that night, I stood on my apartment balcony, we'd upgraded to a 2-bedroom in a better neighborhood, looking at the Seattle skyline, and wondered if I'd ever stop protecting them from the truth. The universe has a cruel sense of humor. I was representing Melissa Harrison in her divorce from Tom Harrison, Preston's cousin. The Harrison family, old Seattle money, new Seattle arrogance. I should have seen the connection, but Melissa came to me desperate and broken, and I couldn't turn away another woman being discarded by that family. The mediation was scheduled at the Columbia Center, neutral ground. I arrived early with Melissa, reviewing our asset division proposals, when the conference room door opened and my past walked in. Preston entered first, and time stuttered. 5 years had aged him, silver threading through his temple, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He was representing his cousin, because of course he was. The Harrisons protected their own. Then I saw her. Elaine, dressed in winter white, lips pursed like she'd bitten into something sour. And beside her, a younger woman, perfectly polished, enormous diamond glinting on her left hand. The fiancée. Preston's eyes found mine and widened. His gaze traveled to the photos on my briefcase. the boys' school pictures I always carried. His face went white. And Ariel, my name came out strangled. Mr. Langston, I kept my voice professionally cold. Shall we begin? But he wasn't listening. He was staring at those photos. At two boys with his eyes and his smile and his stubborn chin. The math was easy, even for someone who'd tried not to think about it for 5 years. Jesus Christ, he breathed. Preston? The fiancé touched his arm, confused. Do you know her? Elaine had gone rigid in her chair. She saw it too, saw her legacy walking around in miniature, denied and discarded. Perhaps we should take a brief recess, I suggested, my voice steady despite my hammering heart. No. Melissa grabbed my hand. Please, I need this done today. So we sat across from each other, Preston and I, negotiating someone else's broken marriage while our own ghosts filled the room. His hands shook as he reviewed documents. He kept stealing glances at the photos, at me, at the life he'd thrown away. The fiancée, Rebecca, I learned, tried to make small talk during breaks. Your boys are adorable. They look just like... She stopped, pieces clicking together. Oh my God, Preston? He couldn't answer. Elaine could. We should focus on the matter at hand, she said, ice in every syllable. But Rebecca wasn't stupid. Those are your children. Not a question. You have children and you never told me? I didn't know, Preston said quietly. Didn't want to know, I corrected. Your security turned me away when I tried to tell you. Your assistant delivered the message quite clearly. You wanted nothing to do with your past. The words hung in the air like knives. Melissa squeezed my hand, understanding dawning on her face. You're the ex-wife, she whispered. The one Tom said got written out of everything. We finished the mediation in excruciating tension. Melissa got everything we asked for. Tom Harrison folded rather than extend the torture. As we packed up, Preston cornered me by the elevator. Ariel, please, let me... No. I hit the button repeatedly. You made your choice. I didn't know. You didn't want to know? The elevator opened and I stepped in. That's the difference. But he wedged his foot in the door. Their names. At least tell me their names. I could have been cruel, could have stayed silent. But the boys deserved better than my bitterness. Ethan and Lucas, they're 8. Can I... No. The door started to close. And if you contact them directly, I'll file a restraining order. I'm very good at those now. The door shut on his stricken face. In the elevator, Melissa hugged me tight. You're the strongest woman I know, she said, but I didn't feel strong. I felt exposed, like a wound torn open after years of careful healing. That night, the calls started. Preston left voicemail after voicemail, each more desperate than the last. Texts flooded my phone until I blocked his number. Emails found their way around my filters. Please, I'm begging you. Let me meet them. Let me explain. I'm sorry. God, Ariel, I'm so sorry. Delete, delete, delete. 2 days later, a courier delivered a letter to my office. Preston's handwriting, shaky and urgent. I dream about them now. 2 boys I've never met who have my father's nose and what I imagine are your stubborn hearts. I wake up calculating birthdays I missed, first words I didn't hear, steps I didn't see. I was a coward. Worse. I was cruel. You deserved better. They deserved better. I know I have no right to ask, but please. 1 hour. Let me see them just once. Let me tell them I'm sorry. I burned it in my office trash can, watching our past turn to ash. The boys didn't need his regret. They needed consistency, love, presence, everything he'd proven incapable of providing. The Women's Legal Alliance Gala was Seattle's premier charity event, $500 a plate to fund legal services for domestic violence survivors. I'd bought a table for my firm, never imagining the Langstons would be there too. But the universe, as I mentioned, has a cruel sense of humor. I wore the one designer dress I owned, a midnight blue Tadashi shoji I'd found at a consignment shop. The boys flanked me in their rented tuxedos, Ethan tugging at his bow tie while Lucas practiced his handshake. Remember, I said, smoothing Lucas's cowlick, this is Mommy's work event, best behavior. We know. Ethan rolled his eyes. Smile, be polite. Don't mention the time Lucas threw up on a judge. That was one time, Lucas protested. We were laughing as we entered the ballroom, and then the laughter died. The Langston table was front and center. Preston, Elaine, Rebecca, and several city council members. Preston saw us first, half rising from his chair before Rebecca pulled him down. "Breathe," whispered Diane Chen, my old mentor, suddenly at my elbow. "You belong here more than they do." The evening progressed in careful avoidance. I kept the boys busy meeting other lawyers, letting them charm everyone with their precociousness. Lucas discussed his favorite Supreme Court justice, RBG, obviously, with a federal judge. Ethan demonstrated his mock trial skills to the district attorney. Then came the awards portion. "This year's Champion for Children Award," the MC announced, "goes to someone whose dedication transcends professional obligation. She's taken on the state's most powerful law firms pro bono, reunited families torn apart by the system, and proven that justice isn't just for those who can afford it." I was adjusting Lucas's napkin, only half listening, when Diane nudged me. "Ariel, that's you." "What?" "Please welcome Ariel Monroe of Monroe Legal Alliance." The spotlight found me as the ballroom erupted in applause. The boys jumped up, cheering like I'd won the Super Bowl. I stood on shaky legs, making my way to the stage in a daze. "But wait," the MC continued. "We have a special presenter for this award." A young woman climbed the stage, early 20s, bright-eyed despite her nervous energy. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. "My name is Jessica Pearson," she said into the microphone. 2 years ago, Ms. Monroe represented my mother in her custody battle against my stepfather, against Tom Harrison, actually. The ballroom went silent. At the Langston table, I saw Elaine's face drain of color. My stepfather had money, connections, the best lawyers. Jessica looked directly at Preston. He said my mom was unfit because she'd been hospitalized for depression after he hit her. He had photos of our small apartment, called her an inadequate provider. Sound familiar? Preston flinched. "Ms. Monroe didn't just win our case," Jessica continued. "She made sure my mom got counseling, job training, everything she needed to rebuild. She checked on us for months after, no charge. She gave us hope when the Harrison family tried to bury us in despair." She turned to me, tears streaming. "You saved our lives. Literally. My mom was suicidal before you took our case. So thank you from all the families you've pulled from the wreckage." I accepted the award through blurred vision, hugging Jessica tight. When I turned back to the audience, I caught sight of my boys, beaming with pride. And beyond them, the Langston table in various states of shock. "Thank you," I managed into the microphone. "But I'm not a hero. I'm just a mother who learned that sometimes the only way forward is through. Every woman I represent, I see myself 5 years ago. Broken, discarded, told I was worthless because I couldn't fulfill someone else's expectations." I looked directly at Preston and Elaine. To those women, I want to say, you are not your circumstances. You are not what they said you were when they left. You are warriors, and your children will grow up knowing that their mothers moved mountains for them. The applause was deafening. I walked off stage to a standing ovation, the boys rushing to hug me. As we returned to our table, I noticed Elaine whisper urgently to Preston before sweeping out of the ballroom. Rebecca sat frozen, staring at her engagement ring. "Mom," Ethan said, pointing to where Preston now stood alone by his table. "That man keeps looking at us." I knelt to their eye level. "He's someone from Mommy's past. We don't need to worry about him." "Is he why those ladies were crying?" Lucas asked. "Too perceptive for 8. Something like that." We stayed through dessert, the boys charming everyone at our table. Preston tried to approach twice, but colleagues intercepted him both times. Word had spread quickly through the legal community. Seattle's family lawyers protect their own. As we prepared to leave, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Rebecca stood there, mascara smudged, engagement ring notably absent from her finger. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't know about any of it." "It's not your fault." "No, but I need to thank you." She glanced back at Preston, who was watching us with desperate eyes. "You just saved me from making the biggest mistake of my life." She walked away, head high, leaving Preston standing alone in a room full of people who'd heard exactly what kind of man he was. The boys and I left through a side door, but not before I heard someone at the Langston table say, "My God, Preston, they look exactly like you." "Mom, who is our dad?" Lucas asked the question over breakfast 3 weeks after the gala, his eyes serious behind his new glasses. Ethan looked up from his cereal, equally expectant. "I'd known this day would come." had practiced my response 1,000 times. But sitting there, looking at Preston's eyes and my children's faces, the prepared words crumbled. Someone who wasn't ready to be a father, I said carefully. But that has nothing to do with how wonderful you both are. Jessica said her stepdad was a Harrison, Ethan pointed out. The man at the party looked like us. Is he a Harrison too? My brilliant, observant boys. I set down my coffee mug. Yes, Preston Langston. Is your biological father. They absorbed this quietly, Lucas drawing patterns in his spilled milk while Ethan kicked his chair leg. Why didn't he want us? Lucas finally asked, and the question cracked my heart clean through. It's complicated, baby. He didn't know about you for a long time, and by then, we'd built our own family. Does he want to know us now? Ethan, always direct. I think he does. Do we want to know him? I looked at my sons, thoughtful Lucas, bold Ethan, and realized I'd been making their choices for them. Protection and control, two sides of the same coin. That's your decision to make, I said. But whatever you choose, we do it together. They whispered to each other in that twin language they'd never quite outgrown. Then Lucas spoke for both of them. We want to write him a letter, but you read it first, and if we meet him, you stay with us. Always, I promised. The letter they wrote was heartbreaking in its simplicity. Dear Mr. Langston, we know you're our biological father. We want to ask you some questions. 1. Why did you leave our mom? 2. Do you have any diseases we should know about? 3. Do you like baseball? We both play Little League. 4. Are you sorry, Ethan and Lucas Monroe? I sent it through my lawyer with strict instructions. Any response goes through me first. Any meeting happens under supervision. Any attempt to circumvent these rules results in immediate termination of contact. Preston's response came within hours, handwritten on personal stationery. Dear Ethan and Lucas, thank you for writing to me. To answer your questions. 1. I left your mom because I was scared and stupid and listened to the wrong people. It's the biggest regret of my life. 2. Your grandfather had high blood pressure. I'm healthy. 3. I love baseball. I still have my glove from college. 4. Sorry isn't big enough for what I feel. I'm sorry I missed 8 years. I'm sorry I hurt your mom. I'm sorry you had to wonder why you didn't have a dad. I'm sorry for all of it. If you'll let me, I'd like to meet you. Not to be your dad. You don't need me for that. You have everything you need with your mom. But maybe to be someone who cares about you, even though I don't deserve to. Preston. I read it 3 times, searching for manipulation, finding only raw honesty. The boys read it together, huddled on the couch. He sounds sad, Lucas observed. Good, Ethan said, but without heat. Can we meet him? The meeting was arranged for a Saturday at a neutral location, a family counselor's office that specialized in reunification. Dr. Sarah Kim would facilitate, making sure everyone felt safe. Preston arrived early. Through the observation window, I watched him pace, check his reflection, sit down, stand up again. He'd lost weight, aged more in 3 weeks than in the previous 5 years. Ready? I asked the boys. They nodded, each taking one of my hands. We entered together. Preston's face when he saw them? I'd expected tears, but not the complete crumbling of his composure. He dropped to his knees, putting himself at their eye level. Hi, he said, voice breaking. Hi, they said in unison. Dr. Kim guided us through introductions, safe topics. The boys showed him their baseball cards. Preston showed them photos of his college team. They discovered shared interests. Ethan had Preston's talent for math, Lucas, his artistic eye. Why did you hit our mom? Ethan asked suddenly. Because 8-year-olds have no filter. Preston flinched. Because I was angry and scared and wrong. There's no excuse for it. Real men don't hit people they love. Real men don't hit anyone unless they're protecting someone. Mom protects everyone, Lucas said proudly. She's a superhero lawyer. I know, Preston said, glancing at me. She always was stronger than me. The hour passed quickly. As we prepared to leave, Preston pulled out 2 wrapped packages. I know I can't make up for missed birthdays, he said. But I thought, maybe. Inside were baseball gloves, beautiful leather ones with their names embossed. Cool. Ethan examined his. Mom, can we play catch with him sometime? I looked at Preston. This man who'd broken me, discarded me, denied us. I thought about Luis's words. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. Once a month, I heard myself say. Supervised in public places. We'll see how it goes. Preston's grateful expression was almost too much. Thank you, Ariel. I know I don't deserve. You're right, you don't. This isn't for you. It's for them. Walking to the car, Lucas slipped his hand in mine. Mom, I think he really is sorry. I think so too, baby. But we don't need him, right? We have you. You have me forever. That night, I called Luis to tell him about the meeting. He listened quietly, then chuckled. You're learning the hardest lesson, mija. Sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all. Just living well and letting them see what they lost. 1 year later, I stood in my office at Monroe Legal Alliance. No longer a cramped space, but a full floor in a Pioneer Square building. 20 attorneys, twice as many support staff, all dedicated to protecting families the system forgot. The irony wasn't lost on me. Langston Construction had bid on our building renovation. They didn't get it. Ms. Monroe? My assistant knocked. Dr. Patel is here. Jason Patel entered with the same warm smile he'd worn that night in the NICU, when he'd spent 16 straight hours saving my boys. Now he brought lunch twice a week, sent funny texts during long court days, and had somehow become the brightest part of my carefully reconstructed life. Brought Indian food, he said, setting bags on my desk. And something else. The ring box appeared like magic. Simple, elegant, perfect. A solitaire that caught the light like hope itself. Ariel Monroe, he said, taking my hand. You've been fighting alone for so long. Let me fight beside you. Marry me? Through the wall of windows, Seattle sprawled gray and gorgeous. 9 years ago, I'd fled this city in pieces. Now I owned a piece of it. The boys love me almost as much as I love them. I asked their permission last week. He grinned. Ethan negotiated. I apparently owe him a PlayStation. I laughed, crying, saying yes to this man who'd seen me at my weakest and waited patiently for me to find my strength. That afternoon, a letter arrived. Elaine's handwriting, which I hadn't seen since the thank you notes she'd made me write for wedding gifts a lifetime ago. Inside a leather journal and a single page. Ariel, this was my diary from when Preston was born. I thought you should know, his father left me too, when pregnancy made me undesirable. I raised Preston alone until I remarried into the Langston family. I taught my son that women who couldn't give men children were worthless because that's what I'd been taught. I perpetuated a cycle I should have broken. You broke it. You became everything I was too afraid to be. I'm dying. Cancer, stage 4. I won't ask for forgiveness I don't deserve. But I wanted you to know, when I see your boys at their baseball games, I see the life we all could have had if I'd been brave like you. Elaine, I sat with that journal for hours, reading a young woman's fear and pain that had calcified into cruelty. By the time the boys came home from school, I'd made my decision. We're going to see your grandmother, I told them. She's sick and she needs to meet you properly before it's too late. They exchanged their twin look. Dad's mom? The mean one? People aren't just one thing, I said. Sometimes they're mean because they're hurt. Elaine lived in a care facility now, her empire reduced to a single room with a view of the Sound. She looked small in her hospital bed, the designer clothes replaced with soft pajamas. You came, she whispered. The boys wanted to meet you. I nudged them forward. Properly this time. What followed was awkward, painful, and somehow healing. The boys showed her their report cards, told her about their baseball team. She cried when Lucas drew her a picture, when Ethan offered to read to her. I'm sorry, she told me when the boys went to get snacks. It's not enough, but I'm sorry. I know. Preston loves them. He's trying to be better. She gripped my hand with surprising strength. Don't let my poison be their legacy. 2 months later, we buried Elaine Langston on a rain-soaked Tuesday. The boys stood between Preston and me, confused by grief for someone they'd barely known. Preston's tears were real, complicated, the grief of a son who'd never escaped his mother's shadow until it was too late. The wedding came in spring, in a garden where cherry blossoms fell like snow. Ethan and Lucas walked me down the aisle, arguing over who got which side. Jason waited under an arch of white roses, his family filling one side, my chosen family filling the other. Preston came, sitting in the back with his new girlfriend, a teacher who didn't care about his money. He'd given up the family business, started coaching Little League, attended therapy twice a week. The boys saw him monthly, slowly building something that might someday resemble a relationship. "You sure about this?" Luis asked as we reached the altar, my boys flanking me like tiny bodyguards. I looked at Jason, at my sons, at the life I'd built from ashes and determination and the stubborn refusal to let anyone else write my ending. Never been more sure of anything. As Jason slipped the ring on my finger, Lucas tugged my dress. "Mom, you look like a princess." "Better," Ethan corrected. "She looks like a queen." And standing there, surrounded by love I'd earned instead of begged for, I finally believed it. The crown wasn't something someone else could give or take away. It was forged in survival, polished by perseverance, and worn only by those who'd learned to rise.